The grand chamber floated in the darkness of space, a monument to power that had stood for 10,000 years. Inside, 7 species sat in judgment, their seats arranged in a circle that had never welcomed newcomers. Ambassador Helen Wright walked across the polished floor, her footsteps echoing in the silence. Behind her, Captain David Ross carried the data tablets containing Earth's petition. Every eye in the chamber watched them with cold curiosity. Helen had prepared for this moment for 3 years. She had learned 6 alien languages, studied the histories of the council races, and memorized every protocol. Yet nothing could prepare her for the weight of their stares. These beings had crossed the stars when humans still lived in caves. They had built empires while Earth was discovering fire. "Honorable Council," Helen began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I come before you representing the people of Earth. We seek membership in this great assembly. We offer our strength, our knowledge, and our dedication to peace." High Chancellor Oren leaned forward on his elevated seat. His scales gleamed under the chamber lights, red and gold like burning metal. He had ruled the Valorian Empire for 2 centuries, and his reputation preceded him. "Fair but proud," they said. "Wise but traditional. Your strength?" Oren's voice rumbled through the chamber. "You have been in space for barely 100 of your years. We have sailed the stars for millennia. What strength do you possess that we lack?" Helen gestured to Ross, who activated the first display. Images filled the air between them, showing Earth's technological achievements. Fusion reactors that could power entire cities, medical advances that had conquered diseases, agricultural systems that could feed billions. "We learn quickly," Helen said. "What took you 1,000 years to develop, we achieved in 100. We adapt, we innovate, we solve problems in ways others have not considered." Counselor Bren, a being made of living crystal that caught and reflected light in mesmerizing patterns, spoke next. Her voice sounded like wind chimes. "Innovation without wisdom is dangerous. Your species still fights among itself. Your world bears scars from your wars. Why should we trust such violent children with the secrets of the galaxy?" The words stung because they were true. Earth had nearly destroyed itself twice in the last century. Nuclear weapons had come close to ending everything. But humanity had stepped back from the brink. They had chosen survival over destruction. "We have learned from our mistakes," Helen replied. "Yes, we fought. Yes, we nearly destroyed ourselves. But we chose peace instead. We united our world under one government. We ended poverty and hunger. We directed our energy toward the stars instead of toward each other. Is that not the very wisdom you speak of?" A third counselor spoke, his voice harsh and dismissive. Counselor Celis of the Dren Confederacy looked like a massive amphibian, his skin mottled green and blue. "Words, nothing but words. You seek to join us because you want our technology. You want our protection. You want to benefit from our strength without earning your place." "No," Helen said firmly. "We seek membership because we belong here, because we have something to contribute, because the galaxy faces threats that require unity, not division." That got their attention. Oren raised one clawed hand. "Threats? What threats could you possibly know of that we do not?" Helen took a breath. This was the crucial moment. Ross activated another display, showing data their long-range sensors had collected from the galactic rim. Strange signals, disappearing colonies, ships that never returned. "Something is coming from the edge of the galaxy," Helen said. "Our scouts have detected unusual activity. Colonies in the outer territories have gone silent. We believe a hostile force is gathering strength. We came to warn you and to offer our help in facing this danger together." The chamber erupted in scoffing laughter. Even Bren, who had been somewhat respectful, shimmered with what could only be amusement. Oren's laugh boomed loudest of all. "You come to warn us?" Oren could barely contain his mirth. "You who have explored barely 1% of your own region, presume to warn us of dangers? We have monitoring stations throughout the galaxy. We have fleets that could glass 100 worlds. If there were truly a threat, we would know long before you did." "But the data," Helen started. "Is meaningless," Celis interrupted. "Colonies go silent for many reasons. Equipment fails. People relocate. Your sensors, primitive as they are, probably misinterpreted natural phenomena. You see shadows and call them monsters." Helen felt her hope crumbling. This was not going as planned. She had expected skepticism, but not mockery. Not this complete dismissal of everything Earth had to offer. "We are not asking for charity," she said, trying once more. "We are offering partnership. Our military might be young, but our tactics are fresh. Our science might be limited, but our creativity is boundless. Our culture might seem strange to you, but our determination is absolute. Give us a chance to prove ourselves." Oren stood, his full height impressive and intimidating. "Ambassador Wright, your passion is noted. But passion alone does not qualify a species for council membership. You lack the experience. You lack the maturity. You lack the perspective that comes from ages of spacefaring civilization. Perhaps in another 1,000 years, when you have truly proven yourselves, we will reconsider. Until then, Earth shall remain confined to its home system. You may conduct trade with approved partners, but you will not expand beyond your current boundaries. This is for your own protection as much as for the galaxy's stability." "This is a mistake," Helen said, her voice tight with frustration. "When the danger comes, and it will come, you will need every ally you can find. You will need fresh ideas and new approaches. You will need us. When and if such a danger appears," Bren said gently, "we have survived every threat the galaxy has produced for 10,000 years. We will survive whatever comes next. Your concern is touching but unnecessary." The vote was swift and unanimous. Earth's petition was denied. The restrictions would remain in place. As Helen and Ross left the chamber, she felt the weight of failure pressing down on her shoulders. Behind them, the council moved on to other business, dismissing humanity as easily as one might swat away an insect. Ross spoke quietly as they walked back to their ship. "What do we do now?" Helen looked out at the stars through a viewport. Somewhere out there, the danger was real. She knew it in her bones. The council would learn the truth soon enough. "We prepare," she said. "We build our defenses. We make ourselves ready. Because when they finally understand what is coming, they are going to need us whether they admit it or not." Neither of them knew how soon that moment would arrive, or how terrible the cost would be, before the council learned to respect humanity. But Helen had not given up. Humans never did. That was their greatest strength and their defining characteristic. They fell down and got back up. They were told no and tried anyway. They faced impossible odds and fought regardless. The council had made their decision. Now humanity would make theirs. 3 months had passed since Earth's rejection, and the galaxy was burning. Admiral Grace Porter studied the tactical display in her command center, watching as red markers spread across the star map like a disease. Each marker represented a fallen world, a silenced colony, a fleet that had stopped responding to communications. The outer territories were collapsing faster than anyone had predicted. The enemy called themselves nothing. The galaxy called them Ravagers. They came from beyond the galactic rim, a nightmare made real. Their ships moved in perfect coordination, thousands of vessels acting as one. They did not negotiate. They did not communicate. They simply consumed everything in their path, stripping worlds of resources and leaving dead rocks behind. Grace had spent 20 years building Earth's defense fleet from nothing. After the Council's rejection, humanity had poured resources into military development. Better ships, stronger weapons, smarter strategies. They had prepared for the worst while hoping for the best. Now the worst had arrived, and it was even more terrible than their darkest predictions. "Admiral, we are receiving another distress call," Lieutenant Williams reported from the communications station. "The Valorian colony on Hadrian's world is under attack. They are requesting immediate assistance." Grace felt a bitter satisfaction. The same Valorians who had laughed at Earth's warnings were now begging for help. High Chancellor Oren's mighty fleets were being torn apart by an enemy they did not understand. The Council's traditional tactics meant nothing against the Ravagers. Their predictable formations and centuries-old strategies were being countered with ease. "What is the Council's response?" Grace asked, though she already knew the answer. "They dispatched the 3rd Valorian fleet 3 hours ago," Williams replied. "Current estimates suggest the colony will fall before they arrive. The Council fleets are stretched too thin." General Lucas Hahn entered the command center, his weathered face grim. He had been Earth's chief military strategist during the preparation years, the man who had turned humanity's defensive capabilities into something formidable. He approached Grace with a data tablet. "The numbers keep getting worse," Lucas said quietly, so only Grace could hear. "The Council has lost 43 major colonies in the last 2 months. Their casualty reports are in the millions, and that is only what they are admitting publicly. The real numbers are probably twice that." "How are the Ravagers adapting so quickly?" Grace asked. "They are a hive mind," Lucas explained. Every ship, every soldier, every piece of their civilization is connected to a central consciousness. When one learns something, they all learn it. The Council's fleets use the same tactics they have used for thousands of years. The Ravagers learned those patterns in the first week and now counter them perfectly. Grace understood immediately. The Council's greatest strength, their ancient experience, had become their greatest weakness. They were too set in their ways, too confident in methods that had always worked before. Against a normal enemy, their approach would be devastating. Against the Ravagers, it was suicide. "Admiral," another voice called out. "We have a situation in our home system." Grace's blood ran cold. She pulled up the local display. 3 Ravager ships had entered Earth's solar system, moving past Neptune toward the inner planets. They were scouts, probably, testing humanity's defenses. But 3 Ravager vessels were enough to destroy a dozen conventional warships. "Sound General Alert," Grace ordered. "Launch the First Fleet, authorization Porter 77 Alpha." Alarms blared throughout the command center. Across Earth and its orbital facilities, ships began launching. The First Fleet consisted of 60 vessels, every one of them built with lessons learned from studying the Council's failures. They were smaller than traditional warships, faster, and equipped with weapons systems that prioritized adaptability over raw power. Grace transferred her command to the flagship Defiant, a sleek vessel that looked nothing like the massive dreadnoughts the Council favored. Within minutes, she was in space, the planet falling away below as her fleet formed up. Captain David Ross commanded the Defiant's tactical systems, the same man who had stood beside Ambassador Wright during that humiliating Council session. "Enemy vessels are holding position near Mars orbit," Ross reported. "They appear to be scanning our defenses." "Let them look," Grace said. "But not for long. All ships execute pattern Delta. Do not engage in formation. I want random attack vectors, varied weapon frequencies, and constant position changes. Make them think they are fighting 60 different enemies, not one fleet." The First Fleet scattered like startled birds, each ship moving independently toward the Ravagers. This was the key difference between human tactics and Council tactics. The Council fought with precision and coordination, their fleets moving as unified forces. Humanity fought like wolves, each unit semi-independent but working toward the same goal. The Ravagers responded immediately, their ships moving to intercept. Energy beams lanced through space, missing their targets as human vessels juked and rolled in ways the enemy had not expected. Return fire came from dozens of angles, forcing the Ravager ships to divide their attention. Grace watched her tactical display with fierce concentration. "Ross, what are they doing?" "They are trying to predict our movements," Ross replied. "But we keep changing our patterns. They adapt to one tactic, we switch to another. It is confusing their coordination protocols." The battle lasted 17 minutes. In that time, humanity lost 3 ships and suffered damage to 7 more. But when it was over, all 3 Ravager vessels were floating debris, their hulls torn apart by concentrated fire from unexpected directions. The command center erupted in cheers. It was Earth's first major engagement with the Ravagers, and they had won decisively. Grace allowed herself a moment of satisfaction before returning to business. "Scan the debris," she ordered. "I want to know everything about their technology, how they communicate, how they coordinate, what makes them tick, and get me a secure line to Earth Command. We need to share this data with our scientists immediately." As her crew worked, Grace thought about the Council. They were still fighting the Ravagers with traditional methods, still losing battle after battle. They were too proud to ask Earth for help, too set in their ways to change their approach. How many more worlds would burn before they admitted they needed something different? The answer came sooner than expected. Grace was reviewing battle reports when Ambassador Wright's face appeared on her communication screen. Helen looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes. "Admiral, we just received a private message from High Chancellor Oren," Helen said. "He wants to discuss a potential arrangement." Grace raised an eyebrow. "An arrangement? Not an apology? Not an admission they were wrong?" "Nothing like that," Helen replied with a tired smile.
"He is offering limited technology sharing in exchange for military consultation."
"No council membership, no equal standing. Just advice and assistance. What did you tell him?" "I told him no." Helen's smile grew wider. "I told him that if the council wants humanity's help, they need to offer full membership and equal authority. Otherwise, we will focus on defending our own territory and let them handle their own problems." Grace felt a surge of pride. The Council had dismissed Earth as primitive children. Now those children were the only ones winning against the Ravagers, and the mighty Council was begging for scraps. How did he respond? Grace asked. He was not happy, Helen said, but he is desperate. The Council is falling apart, Admiral. They are blaming each other, arguing about strategy, refusing to admit their approach is failing. Meanwhile, the Ravagers are pushing deeper into Council territory every day. Oren will come back. They all will. And when they do, they will have to meet our terms. Grace nodded slowly. And if they do not? If they let their pride destroy them rather than accept our help? Helen was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Then we save who we can and prepare for when the Ravagers reach our borders. But I do not think it will come to that. The Council is learning what we learned a long time ago. Pride is a luxury you can only afford when you are winning. The emergency session of the Galactic Council took place under circumstances no one had imagined possible. Half the chamber seats were empty, their occupants dead or missing as the Ravagers consumed world after world. Councillor Bren's crystalline form had cracks running through it, stress fractures from weeks of constant worry. High Chancellor Oren looked older than his 2 centuries, his scales dull and his movements slow. 40% of Council territory had fallen in just 2 months. Billions were dead or displaced. The mighty fleets that had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years were scattered and broken. And still the Ravagers came, their endless ships pushing deeper into civilized space with every passing day. We cannot continue like this, Bren said, her voice no longer musical but harsh and grating. Our losses are unsustainable. Our people are losing faith. The outer colonies are talking about surrendering to the Ravagers just to end the suffering. Surrendering accomplishes nothing, Oren growled. The Ravagers do not accept surrender. They do not take prisoners. They consume and move on. There is no negotiating with them. Councillor Silas slammed a webbed hand on his desk. Then what do you suggest? Our fleets are being destroyed. Our tactics fail again and again. The Ravagers adapt to everything we try. We need something different, something new. The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew what Celis meant, but no one wanted to say it out loud. Finally, a junior counselor from one of the smaller member species spoke up. His voice trembled with fear and shame. The humans, he said. They defeated a Ravager scouting force in their home system. They lost only 3 ships, 3. We lose entire fleets in every engagement. Because they are fighting 3 ships, not 300, Celis snapped. Of course they won. It means nothing. It means their tactics work, Bren said quietly. It means they have found a way to fight the Ravagers effectively. Whether we like it or not, the humans are succeeding where we are failing. Oren stood and paced the chamber floor. His pride warred with his practicality. He had ruled for 2 centuries by being both wise and strong. But strength meant nothing if his people were dying. Wisdom meant admitting when you were wrong. I will contact Ambassador Wright, Oren said finally. I will offer a limited partnership, technology sharing, military consultation, perhaps some joint operations. In exchange, they provide their tactical expertise and assist in key battles. And council membership? Bren asked. No, Oren said firmly. They are still too young, too inexperienced. But we can offer them a path to membership. Provisional status, perhaps, with full membership to be considered after the crisis has passed. The vote was called. It passed narrowly, with several councillors abstaining. Oren retired to his private chamber and opened a secure communication channel to Earth. Ambassador Wright's face appeared on the screen, and Oren was struck by how calm she looked. While his civilization burned, the humans remained steady and focused. High Chancellor, Helen said politely. To what do I owe this call? Oren had prepared a speech, carefully worded to maintain dignity while requesting assistance. But looking at Helen's knowing expression, he realized she had expected this. She knew exactly why he was calling. The situation has become difficult, Oren said, choosing his words carefully. The Council recognizes that humanity has developed effective tactics against the Ravagers. We would like to discuss a cooperative arrangement. What kind of arrangement? Helen asked. We can offer you access to advanced technology, Oren said. Faster than light communication systems, shield generators beyond your current capabilities, medical advances. In return, we would appreciate tactical consultation and assistance in certain key battles. And council membership? A provisional status leading to potential full membership after the crisis, Oren replied. A reasonable path forward for both our peoples, Helen was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled, and it was not a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who had been wronged and now held all the power. "No," she said simply. Oren felt his blood run cold. "I do not think you understand the gravity of the situation, Ambassador. The galaxy is falling. If we do not work together, the Ravagers will consume us all, including Earth." "I understand perfectly," Helen said. "What I do not understand is why the Council believes they can still dictate terms. You rejected us when we came asking for partnership. You mocked our warnings. You laughed at our concerns. Now you are losing a war and you want our help, but you still want to treat us as lesser beings." "That is not what I am suggesting," Oren protested. "Yes, it is," Helen interrupted. "Provisional status? A path to membership. You are offering us the privilege of dying for you with the promise that maybe, if we perform well enough, you might consider letting us sit at your table. That is not partnership. That is employment." Oren's temper flared. "You're being unreasonable. We are offering you a way to join the galactic community, to gain access to knowledge and technology beyond your wildest dreams. And you reject it out of pride?" "No," Helen said coldly. "We reject it out of self-respect. Humanity will not beg for scraps from your table. If the Council wants our help, you will offer full and immediate membership with equal authority in all military decisions. You will publicly acknowledge that you were wrong to reject us, and you will treat us as true partners, not as servants to be used and discarded when convenient." "That is impossible," Oren said. "The Council cannot make such a decision under duress. It would set a dangerous precedent." "Then make your decision not under duress," Helen replied. "But while you debate and discuss and protect your precious precedents, remember that every day you delay, more of your people die. The choice is yours, Chancellor. Partnership or pride. You cannot have both." The communication ended. Oren stared at the blank screen, feeling more helpless than he had in his entire life. The human was right and he knew it. But accepting her terms meant admitting the Council had been completely wrong. It meant humbling themselves before a species they had dismissed as children. Days passed. The Council debated endlessly. Councillor Celis argued passionately against giving in to human demands. Bren argued just as passionately in favor, and while they argued, another 12 colonies fell to the Ravagers. Then something changed. A recording was leaked to the public. A private conversation between Council members where they blamed each other for ignoring Earth's original warnings, where they admitted their tactics were failing, where they discussed abandoning entire sectors to save their core worlds. The outcry was immediate and overwhelming. Surviving colonies demanded action. Military commanders called for new leadership. The families of the dead wanted accountability. The Council's authority, absolute for 10,000 years, was crumbling. Minister of Defense Raymond Cole sent a message to the Council that was broadcast on every public channel. Earth would send aid to any colony that requested it, Council approval or not. Humanity would defend those who could not defend themselves. The galaxy could choose, cling to a failing Council or embrace a new partnership. Dozens of colonies accepted immediately. Earth's ships began deploying across the war zone, small fleets that operated independently, using tactics the Ravagers could not predict. And they won. Not every battle, but enough. Enough to give people hope. Enough to make the Council's failures even more obvious. Councillor Bren came to Oren's chamber late one night. Her crystalline form glowed softly in the dim light. "We are losing more than territory," she said. "We are losing our legitimacy. The humans are gaining influence not through politics but through action. If we do not accept their terms soon, the decision will be taken from our hands. The colonies will simply declare for Earth and leave us behind." Oren knew she was right. The Council faced a choice between humiliation and destruction. When faced with that decision, there was only one rational answer. "Call an emergency session," Oren said tiredly. "It is time to admit our mistakes and accept our new partners. May the ancients forgive us." The vote was recorded at 3 minutes past midnight Galactic Standard Time. By dawn, every species in the galaxy knew that humanity had been granted full Council membership with equal authority in all military matters. High Chancellor Oren made the announcement personally, his voice heavy with shame and resignation. The Council had debated for 5 days while 17 more colonies burned. In the end, survival won over pride. Admiral Grace Porter received her new orders within hours. She was to coordinate human forces across 5 major battlefronts, working alongside Council military leaders who had decades more experience, but none of her success against the Ravagers. The appointment came with resources beyond anything Earth had possessed before. Access to Council shipyards, advanced weapons systems, and intelligence networks that spanned the galaxy. But resources alone would not win this war. The Ravagers still controlled vast territories, and their advance had only slowed, not stopped. Grace stood in Earth's expanded command center, now linked directly to Council military networks, and studied the tactical situation. It was even worse than the public report suggested. The Valorian 7th Fleet was completely destroyed yesterday, General Lucas Hahn reported. They tried a conventional assault on a Ravager staging area. The enemy knew exactly what they would do and positioned accordingly. 300 ships destroyed in less than an hour. They are still fighting the same way, Captain David Ross said in frustration. Even now, even after everything, they cannot break their patterns. It is like watching someone drive straight into a wall over and over, expecting different results. Grace made her decision. Then we show them a different way. Ross, I want you to take command of Strike Force Delta. 15 human ships, no Council vessels. Your target is the captured colony at Eridan Prime. The Valorians lost it 3 weeks ago and have been planning a massive counterattack for tomorrow. We are going to beat them to it? Ross asked. No, Grace smiled grimly. We are going to let them have their counterattack. But while the Ravagers are focused on the main Valorian fleet, you are going to hit them from an unexpected direction. Small force, high speed, targeting their supply lines and command nodes. Make them divide their attention. And if the Valorians get angry that we did not coordinate with them, they will thank us when they win, Grace said. Now go. You launch in 3 hours. Strike Force Delta departed Earth's orbit exactly on schedule. 15 small, fast ships loaded with weapons designed specifically for asymmetric warfare. Ross watched the stars blur past as they jumped to faster-than-light travel, heading toward a battle that might change everything. They arrived in the Eridan system 12 hours before the Valorian fleet. The planet below was scarred and burning, its cities reduced to rubble by Ravager bombardment. In orbit, 60 Ravager vessels maintained a defensive perimeter, confident and secure. They had defeated every Council attack so far. They expected more of the same. All ships execute scatter pattern Omega, Ross ordered. Do not engage the orbital defense. Hit the supply ships behind them. Weapons free. The strike force split apart, each vessel moving independently toward different targets. The Ravagers responded immediately, but their response was predictable. They moved to intercept based on probability calculations, expecting human ships to follow standard attack patterns. But Ross had no intention of following any pattern. His ships juked and rolled, accelerating randomly, changing directions without warning. Every time the Ravagers adapted to one movement, the humans switched to something else. It was chaos by design, and it was working. One by one, Ravager supply vessels exploded under concentrated human fire. The main defensive fleet tried to respond, but they could not protect everything at once. Their hive mind made them powerful but also vulnerable. They thought as one, which meant they could only focus on one problem at a time. Then the Valorian fleet arrived, exactly as planned. 300 massive warships dropping out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. The Ravagers pivoted to face this new threat, exactly as Grace had predicted. And in that moment of distraction, Ross pushed his advantage. All ships target the command carrier, Ross ordered. Maximum firepower, synchronized strike. 15 ships opened fire simultaneously on a single massive Ravager vessel that had been coordinating the defense. The concentrated attack overwhelmed its shields and tore through its hull. The ship exploded in a brilliant flash, and suddenly the Ravager fleet lost cohesion. For just a few seconds, they were disorganized, confused, vulnerable. The Valorian fleet did not waste the opportunity. Their bombardment crashed into the disoriented Ravagers like a hammer. Within minutes, the orbital defense was shattered. The colony below was freed. The Valorian commander, a grizzled veteran named High Captain Rendell, opened a channel to Ross. His reptilian features showed something that might have been grudging respect. That was not how we planned the operation, Rendell said. No, Ross agreed. It was not. But it worked. Yes, Rendell admitted. It did. The Council military has much to learn from your people, Captain. Perhaps we have been fighting this war incorrectly from the beginning. News of the victory spread quickly. Other human commanders achieved similar successes across the galaxy. Commander Neil Foster led a ground assault that recaptured a strategic space station using tactics the Ravagers had never encountered. Instead of a direct attack, Foster's team infiltrated through maintenance tunnels, sabotaged critical systems, and created so much confusion that the defenders retreated thinking they were facing a much larger force. At research facilities across human space, Dr. Amy Liu studied captured Ravager technology with fresh eyes. The Council scientists had been trying to understand the Ravager hive mind for months with little success. Amy approached the problem differently. She did not try to understand it. She tried to disrupt it. The hive mind uses quantum entanglement for faster-than-light communication, Amy explained to Grace during a briefing. The Council has been trying to block these communications, but that is like trying to stop radio waves with a wall. Instead, we should be introducing noise into their network. Confusing signals, false data, conflicting information. Can we do that? Grace asked. We can now, Amy smiled. I have developed a device that broadcasts on the same quantum frequencies the Ravagers use. It does not stop their communication. It just makes it harder for them to tell what is real and what is not, like trying to have a conversation in a crowded room where everyone is shouting. The device was deployed in the next major battle. The effect was immediate and devastating. Ravager ships began moving erratically, firing at empty space, sometimes even targeting each other as false signals made them identify friendly ships as enemies. Their greatest strength, their perfect coordination, became a liability. Admiral Grace Porter watched the battle unfold from her command center, a slow smile spreading across her face. Humanity was not stronger than the Council races. They were not older or wiser, but they were adaptable, creative, and willing to try things that had never been done before. In a war against an enemy that countered every conventional tactic, those qualities were worth more than any amount of firepower. The tide was turning. Slowly, painfully, at great cost, but turning nonetheless. The Ravagers were learning that humanity fought differently. They adapted to human tactics, but humans adapted faster. It became a race of innovation, and humanity had been training for that race for their entire existence. Yet Grace knew this was not over. The Ravagers still controlled vast territories. Their numbers were still overwhelming. Humanity had proven they could win battles, but the war was far from decided. Somewhere in the captured territories was the source of the Ravager hive mind, the central intelligence that coordinated everything. Until that was destroyed, the Ravagers would keep coming. Dr. Amy Liu had not slept properly in 6 days. Her laboratory was filled with screens displaying data from every battlefield, every encounter, every skirmish with the Ravagers. She was searching for something that others had missed, a pattern beneath the chaos. The Council's best scientists had studied the Ravagers for months. Amy had a different advantage. She did not assume anything about how alien intelligence should work. Look at this, she called out to her assistant, a young researcher named Peter Grant. She pulled up communication intercepts from a dozen different battles. Every Ravager force responds with perfect coordination, but watch the timing. There is a delay. Not much, just microseconds, but it is there. Peter leaned closer to the screen. They are receiving instructions from somewhere else. Exactly, Amy said, her excitement growing. The hive mind is not distributed evenly across all their ships. There is a central node, a main intelligence that coordinates everything. The individual Ravagers are more like drones executing commands. The Council scientists said the hive mind was everywhere. Peter objected. That is why they thought it was impossible to target. The Council scientists were wrong, Amy said bluntly. Or rather, they were partially right. The hive mind is distributed, but not equally. Think of it like a tree. The central intelligence is the trunk, and all the branches and leaves are connected to it. Cut down enough branches and the tree keeps growing, but cut the trunk, and the whole thing falls, Peter finished. Can you locate it? Amy spent another 3 days analyzing the data, tracking the microsecond delays back to their source. The pattern pointed to a region deep in Ravager-controlled territory, a star system that had been one of the first to fall when the invasion began. The Council had written it off as lost, too deep behind enemy lines to even consider recapturing. When Amy presented her findings to Admiral Grace Porter, the room fell silent. Every senior military officer in Earth's command structure was present, along with several Council representatives including High Chancellor Oren himself. You are suggesting a strike at the heart of their territory, Oren said slowly. Through hundreds of Ravager-controlled systems past thousands of their ships to attack a target we cannot even confirm exists. The target exists, Amy said firmly. I have triple-checked the data. The central coordination node is in the Helios cluster. Destroy it and the entire Ravager force loses cohesion. They will not be able to coordinate attacks. They will not be able to adapt to our tactics. Each group will fight independently and we can defeat them in detail. And if you are wrong, Counselor Celis demanded. If we commit our forces to this suicide mission and the hive mind simply relocates, we will have lost our fleet for nothing. If we do not try, Grace said quietly, we will lose anyway. The Ravagers are still advancing. We have slowed them, hurt them, even pushed them back in places, but they are endless. Eventually, they will overwhelm us through sheer numbers unless we change the game entirely. General Lucas Hahn studied the tactical display. The Council fleet cannot reach the Helios cluster. Their ships are too large, too slow, too predictable. The Ravagers would see them coming and either destroy them or move the central node before they arrived. But a smaller force might make it, Captain David Ross said. Fast ships, minimal signature, using the same unpredictable tactics that have worked for us so far. How small? Oren asked. 30 ships, Grace said. 20 human vessels, 10 from the Council. Mixed crews, best pilots we have. We go in fast, hit hard, and get out before they can respond. 30 ships against the entire Ravager armada. Celis laughed bitterly. This is insanity. Yes, Ambassador Helen Wright said from her seat at the council table. She had been quiet until now, listening to the debate. It is insane. It is desperate. It is incredibly dangerous. But it is also our best chance. The Ravagers think in terms of probability and logic. They will not expect us to try something this reckless. That gives us an advantage. The debate continued for hours, but in the end the decision was made. Grace would lead the strike force personally. Commander Neil Foster would command the ground team that would infiltrate the central node and destroy it from within. Ross would coordinate the fleet's withdrawal after the mission was complete. 2 days later, 30 ships gathered at a remote staging area, far from any major settlement. The crews were volunteers, every single one of them. They knew the odds. They knew most of them would probably not return. But they also knew what was at stake. Grace stood on the bridge of the Defiant, looking at the faces of her crew. Young and old, human and alien, all united by a single purpose. They had trained together for weeks, learning to work as one despite their differences. The council crews had been skeptical at first, but they had learned to respect human methods. All ships report ready, Ross announced. Course is plotted. We can jump on your command, Grace took a deep breath. Then let's go finish this war. The jump to faster-than-light travel was smooth. 30 ships vanished from normal space and reappeared deep in enemy territory. Immediately alarms blared. Ravager vessels were everywhere, thousands of them, and they had detected the intrusion. Scatter formation, Grace ordered calmly. Do not engage unless necessary. Our goal is to reach the planet, not to fight every Ravager between here and there. The strike force split apart, each ship moving independently, darting between asteroids and debris fields, using every trick they had learned in months of fighting. The Ravagers pursued, but the humans and their council allies refused to be pinned down. They were not running away. They were running toward their target. Ships were lost. 3 destroyed in the first hour, 5 more in the second. But 22 vessels reached the Helios cluster, where a massive Ravager station orbited a dying red star. The central node. It had to be. Foster, you are up, Grace said. We will keep them busy out here. You have 1 hour. Commander Neil Foster led his team of 40 soldiers, a mix of human Marines and Council Special Forces, toward the station in a stealth transport. They docked at a damaged section of the hull and breached the interior. What they found inside was beyond anything they had imagined. The station was alive, not in a biological sense, but it pulsed with energy. Every surface covered in strange technology that seemed to grow and shift like living tissue. At its center, a massive crystalline structure hummed with power, data flowing through it in streams of light. This was the heart of the Ravager hive mind. Plant the charges, Foster ordered. We have 45 minutes. His team moved through the station, setting explosive devices at critical junctions. The Ravagers knew they were there, but seemed unable to stop them. The hive mind was focused on the space battle outside, dividing its attention between defending the station and coordinating forces across the entire galaxy. That was humanity's advantage. They could multitask. They could fight on multiple fronts simultaneously without losing focus. The Ravagers were powerful, but their strength came from unity. Force them to split their attention and cracks appeared. Foster set the final charge himself right at the base of the crystalline core. He stood there for a moment, looking at the alien intelligence that had killed billions, destroyed hundreds of worlds, nearly ended galactic civilization. It was beautiful in a terrible way, and part of him wondered what the Ravagers might have been if they had chosen cooperation instead of consumption. But there was no time for philosophy. All teams fall back to the transport. Double time. They ran through the corridors, fighting past desperate Ravager defenders. 2 soldiers fell, then 3 more. Foster carried a wounded Marine over his shoulder, refusing to leave anyone behind. They reached the transport with 5 minutes to spare. Outside, Grace watched the countdown. The space battle had intensified. Her fleet was down to 15 ships, and the Ravagers were closing in from all sides. They knew what was happening. They knew their central node was threatened. Every available vessel was converging on the Helios cluster. Foster is clear, Ross reported. Charges will detonate in 3 minutes. All ships prepare for emergency jump, Grace ordered. The moment those charges blow, we are leaving. No delays, no stopping. Anyone left behind will have to find their own way home. The seconds crawled past. Grace thought about her crew, about Earth, about everyone depending on this mission's success. She thought about Commander Foster, who had knowingly walked into death to save them all. The charges detonated. The crystalline core shattered into 1,000,000 pieces. Energy erupted from the station like a dying star going supernova. The explosion was visible across the entire system, a beacon of light against the darkness. And everywhere across hundreds of star systems, the Ravagers stopped moving. Their perfect coordination vanished in an instant. Ships drifted without purpose. Ground forces stood motionless. The hive mind was gone, and all that remained were disconnected fragments, confused and disoriented. Grace's fleet jumped away as the station collapsed. Of the 30 ships that had started the mission, only 12 returned to safe space. Commander Neil Foster's transport was not among them. He had stayed behind, manually triggering the detonation when the timer malfunctioned, ensuring the mission succeeded even at the cost of his own life. The victory was complete but bittersweet. Humanity had saved the galaxy, but the price was high. Grace thought about Foster's last words over the communication channel before the explosion. Tell them it was worth it. Tell them we won. She would tell them. The whole galaxy would know what humanity and its allies had sacrificed for victory. 6 months had passed since the destruction of the Ravager central node. The galaxy was healing slowly but surely. Reconstruction efforts were underway on dozens of worlds. The scattered Ravager remnants had been hunted down and destroyed or driven back beyond the galactic rim. Civilization was rebuilding, but it would never be the same as before. The Galactic Council chamber had been repaired and expanded. New seats had been added for species that had earned their place through sacrifice and courage. The old circular arrangement had been modified into something more democratic, where no single species sat above the others. High Chancellor Oren still held his position, but he now shared power with a rotating council of representatives from every member world. Ambassador Helen Wright stood before the assembled leaders of the galaxy, preparing to speak at the ceremony that would formally acknowledge Earth's new status. She wore a simple uniform, not the elaborate robes that council tradition demanded. Some things about humanity would not change, and their preference for practicality over ceremony was one of them. The chamber was filled with thousands of observers. Not just council members and diplomats, but ordinary citizens from hundreds of worlds. They wanted to witness this moment, when the species that had saved them all was finally given the recognition they deserved. High Chancellor Oren rose to speak first. He looked different than he had 6 months ago. Older, certainly, but also humbler. The arrogance that had defined him was gone, replaced by hard-won wisdom. 6 months ago, this council faced annihilation. Oren began, his voice carrying through the chamber. We had been defeated in battle after battle. Our fleets were broken. Our worlds were burning. And in our desperation, we turned to the very species we had once rejected and mocked. He paused, letting the words sink in. I stand before you today to acknowledge a truth that shames me. The Council was wrong. I was wrong. When humanity came to us seeking partnership, we dismissed them as primitive and inexperienced. When they warned us of danger, we laughed at their concerns. When they offered their help, we demanded they prove themselves worthy of our attention. Orin turned to face Helen directly. Ambassador Wright, I offer you and your people a formal apology on behalf of the Galactic Council. We judged you by our own standards and found you lacking. We did not realize that your youth was not a weakness but a strength. Your lack of experience meant you were not bound by our failures. Your different perspective allowed you to see solutions we could not imagine. The chamber remained silent. This was unprecedented. The Galactic Council did not apologize. They did not admit mistakes. But the old council had died in the fires of the Ravager War. What emerged from those ashes was something new. Councillor Bren spoke next, her crystalline form gleaming in the chamber lights. The cracks that had marred her surface had been repaired, though faint lines remained as permanent reminders of the crisis they had survived. This council proposes not just membership for humanity, Bren said, but a fundamental restructuring of our entire system of governance. For 10,000 years we have believed that age equals wisdom, that experience equals competence. The humans have taught us that sometimes fresh eyes see what old ones cannot. Therefore, we propose that Earth be granted full voting rights, equal standing with all council members, and a rotating position of military command authority shared among all member species. The proposal was radical. It meant dismantling thousands of years of tradition. But the galaxy had changed, and its government needed to change as well. Helen stepped forward to respond. She had prepared a speech, careful words crafted over weeks of consultation with Earth's government. But looking at the assembled representatives, at the faces of people from hundreds of worlds who had fought and died alongside humanity, she decided to speak from the heart instead. High Chancellor Orin, Councillor Bren, members of the Galactic Council, I accept your apology, Helen said simply, not because humanity needs validation, but because acknowledging mistakes is the first step toward growth. We all made errors during the Ravager crisis. The Council dismissed our warnings. But humanity also acted with pride, refusing to help until our demands were met. Lives were lost because of these failures on all sides. She walked to the center of the chamber, turning slowly to address everyone present. When Earth first sought council membership, we did so because we wanted to belong. We wanted to be part of something greater than ourselves. We wanted to prove that humanity deserved a place among the stars. But the war taught us something more important. It is not about deserving anything. It is about what we can accomplish together. Helen gestured to the observation gallery where Admiral Grace Porter sat alongside former Ravager War veterans from a dozen species. Admiral Porter commanded forces from 5 different civilizations during the war. Commander Foster, who gave his life to destroy the Ravager Central Node, led a team that included soldiers from 8 different worlds. Dr. Liu, whose research broke the Ravager hive mind, collaborated with council scientists who had decades more experience but respected her fresh perspective. That is what we learned, Helen continued, that unity does not mean uniformity, that cooperation does not require submission, that the strength of a civilization is not measured by how long it has existed, but by how well it adapts and grows. She stopped in front of Orin's seat. You asked what humanity brings to this council. We bring change. We bring challenge. We bring questions that make you uncomfortable and solutions that seem impossible. We bring the willingness to try new things, to fail, to learn, and to try again. And most importantly, we bring the belief that no one species has all the answers. The chamber erupted in applause, not just polite acknowledgement, but genuine enthusiasm. The representatives from the outer colonies who had been saved by human intervention stood and cheered. Even some of the older council members joined in, recognizing the truth in Helen's words. The vote was called. Earth's full membership in the Galactic Council was approved unanimously. But more than that, the restructuring proposal passed as well. The old hierarchy was dismantled. In its place emerged a more equal system, where every member species had real authority and the ability to shape galactic policy. Admiral Grace Porter was appointed Supreme Military Coordinator, a newly created position that answered to the Council as a whole, rather than to any single leader. Her first act was to establish a unified command structure that incorporated tactical innovations from every member species. Human unpredictability, Valorian discipline, Althean strategic planning, and Dren adaptability all combined into a military force stronger than any that had existed before. Captain David Ross took command of the new Rapid Response Fleet, a mobile force designed to react quickly to threats anywhere in the galaxy. It was composed of fast, small ships from multiple species, crewed by volunteers who had trained together during the Ravager War. They were proof that the galaxy had learned its lesson about cooperation. The ceremony concluded with a traditional council ritual, but modified to reflect the new order. Instead of the senior member lighting a ceremonial flame, representatives from every species contributed a small piece of light. The combined illumination filled the chamber, a symbol of unity through diversity. As the crowds dispersed and the formalities ended, Helen found herself standing with Orin on a balcony overlooking the chamber. The old chancellor looked tired but satisfied. "Do you think it will last?" Orin asked quietly. "This new council, this new way of governing?" "I do not know," Helen admitted. "But I think we have to try. The alternative is going back to the old ways, and we all saw where that led." "The galaxy will face new challenges," Orin said. "New threats we cannot imagine. And when those threats arrive, we will need to adapt again." "Then we will adapt," Helen said with confidence. "Together. That is what makes us stronger now. We no longer believe any one species has all the answers. We understand that our differences are not weaknesses to be overcome, but strengths to be celebrated." Orin nodded slowly. "Your species has taught us much, Ambassador. I hope we have taught you something in return." "You have." Helen smiled. "You taught us that even the mightiest can fall if they stop questioning themselves. You taught us that age and experience mean nothing without the wisdom to recognize when change is necessary. And you taught us that redemption is possible, even after terrible mistakes." Below them, in the main chamber, workers were raising new banners. The old council symbols remained, but now they were joined by new ones. Earth's flag, blue and green with a single white star, hung alongside the ancient emblems of species who had ruled the galaxy for millennia. But it was not placed higher or lower than the others. It was equal, as it should be. Helen thought about the journey that had brought them here. From rejection to partnership, from mockery to respect, from isolation to integration. It had cost so much. Commander Foster's sacrifice, the billions who died before the council accepted help, the worlds that burned while pride got in the way of survival. But it had also given them something precious. A galaxy united not by fear or tradition, but by mutual respect and shared purpose. A civilization that embraced change rather than resisting it. A future where young species were not dismissed but welcomed, where different perspectives were valued rather than suppressed. "You know what the irony is?" Helen said to Orin. "When we first came to the council, we wanted to prove we were worthy. We wanted you to see us as equals. But the war taught us we were already equals. We just needed to act like it. And we needed to recognize it," Orin replied. "That was our failure. We confused age with superiority. We believed our way was the only way. The humans reminded us that the galaxy is big enough for many approaches, many philosophies, many solutions." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching as the last of the ceremony participants filed out of the chamber. Somewhere in the distance, construction crews were rebuilding colonies. Scientists were developing new technologies based on lessons learned from the war. Teachers were creating new curricula that included human history, alongside the ancient sagas of the council races. The galaxy was healing, and at its heart, in the chamber where decisions that affected trillions were made, humanity had finally found its place, not as subordinates or as conquerors, but as partners in the great adventure of civilization among the stars. Helen turned to leave, then paused and looked back at Orin one final time. "You mocked Earth's cry for help," she said quietly. "We answered yours anyway, not for glory or recognition, not to prove anything, but because it was the right thing to do. That is what humanity brings to this council. That is our strength." Orin bowed his head in acknowledgement. "And that is why you belong here, Ambassador. Welcome to the Galactic Council. May your voice be heard for generations to come." Helen walked away, her footsteps echoing in the empty chamber. Behind her, the flags of 100 worlds swayed gently in the artificial breeze. Among them, Earth's banner flew proudly, no longer as a petitioner seeking acceptance, but as an equal partner in the governance of the galaxy. The council had mocked humanity's cry, but in the end it was humanity's answer that saved them all.